Core values for good relationships. So I've already looked at personal core values and some other areas. Now I want to focus specifically on the kind of values that you should bring to the fore and fixate on if you want your relationship to go well. Whether you're single or dating or married, trying to make new friends, reconnect with family, in my experience as a coach, where I focus a lot on social stuff, there's just certain values that get more bang for buck than others. And if you're to focus on these, you're giving yourself the best possible chance. Now, of course, these are just my opinions. It might not work out this way for you. You will have heard other advice that contradicts everything I'm saying. You have to just decide for yourself what feels right. First and foremost, the one that I harp on about, my fucking obsession, honesty. Transparent, speak your mind, let everything be known, no secrets type radical honesty. A lot of people will tell you that there's certain levels of deception required, especially at the beginning, the kind of getting to know stage, whether it's dating or meeting new people. I just don't agree with that at all. I think the evidence is too contradictory to agree with that. Connection is not possible with lies, because as soon as you're being even slightly dishonest, it means you're doing impression management. You're putting forward an impression of yourself that does not exist. A false front, a mask. And whatever relationship they form is going to be with the mask, not with you. And if you want to get closer to them later, you're going to have to take the mask down and re-educate them about who you are. Surely it makes sense, just rational sense, that if you gave them the real picture up front, then any relationship they form with you does not need to be rebuilt later, does not need to be changed. You're not going to surprise them with some unpleasant information later on because they're getting what they signed up for right from the beginning. Now, yes, this will have a higher rejection rate than being false and people-pleasing and seductive, because you're going to find out right away how people feel about you. But it's just a delayed reaction when you're being false. If you make someone like you and they're not really going to like the real you, well, when you reveal it later, they're still not going to like it. In fact, they're going to be even more disappointed because of the drop-off from the first impression. You seem a little dull or unattractive or whatever it is in your eyes when you just be real with people from the start. But if they like you for that, then you're golden forever. You're never going to have to worry about losing them because they signed up for the real thing. I think this is the more important bit. You won't lose yourself. It is better to go home alone having been honest than to go home with someone having been deceptive. For your own self-confidence, for your own long-term enjoyment of life. Your relationship with yourself is one that also needs to be considered at all times, because it's the only one you're going to have forever. There's one relationship that you have your entire life, and it's the one with you. Honesty is the bridging of the gap between you and you, that observer and that actor, making sure that they're the same person, a complete unification, a perfect marriage, if you will. If you can unite those two people, then bringing someone else in just feels like a bonus extra. Curiosity, particularly when it comes to conflict resolution, curiosity is the most generous and loving way forward to work through your differences with someone and get to know them truly and deeply. If you come in with judgments and assumptions, know-it-all behavior, unwillingness to be budged, unwillingness to let someone else influence you, I don't know how you imagine that that's going to help you connect with people. I mean, how do you feel when others do that to you? And how do you feel when someone is just genuinely curious about you? I mean, how often has that even happened? It's so rare, isn't it? Unless you run in particularly good circles. It's rare that someone really gives a shit. Sure, people have interviewed you many times, but that's just because they want to try and make it feel like you're having a good conversation. But you know the difference when someone actually gives a shit, when they are really interested into what's happening with you. As I've said in previous content, other people aren't boring. You're just not interested enough. Right? Get curious, find out, share. Let them know you while you get to know them. And you'll find that not only will you get to know each other really deeply, but when it comes to conflict, this is such a more effective approach to resolving conflict than trying to beat them and dominate them and be aggressive. Respect. Resentment's the poison to a relationship, whether romantic or platonic, familial, whatever. Resentment kills it when you start to secretly have problems with the way the other person behaves. And what I've found is often what you will feel is disrespected. And yet, there's a really, really, really fucking good chance that you're being disrespectful yourself. Before you start addressing them on their faults and failings, you got to address your own. Treating others how you wish they treated you. That's what I think is the most relationship-focused definition of respect. I don't mean like, okay, well, I just run around giving everybody head. More about what would make you feel valued as a person, what would make you feel like someone loves you, what would make you feel like you have a loyal ally. List that behavior and go do that to your friends and family and partner, right? Don't wait for them to do it first. You go first. And what you'll be able to see quite quickly is whether or not they reciprocate. So being respectful to others is a great test to figure out who you should actually have in your life. If they do not reciprocate, and it doesn't need to be exact, but if they're not putting in the effort the same way you are, there's nothing else you need to measure. You don't need to listen to their promises and their lies. Their behavior doesn't line up with what you consider to be respectful. When you told them, this is what I want, and they don't deliver, and you have been delivering, it's time to find somebody else. On that note, acceptance. There is nobody you're ever going to have in your life that is perfect. So while you should not tolerate harmful or toxic behavior, you are going to have to accept the humanity of others. Nobody is going to be perfectly living with integrity, right? Nobody's always going to be what you thought they were going to be. Nobody's always going to be in a good mood. The people you're going to have in your life long term are going to go through peaks and valleys. There'll be times where they're distant. There'll be times where they're depressed. There'll be times where they accidentally say something they shouldn't have said and it hurts your feelings. Learning to balance out acceptance with tolerance, to know like that's just them being human, but they're generally a good influence on me, a good person to have in my life. They're trying their best. They regret hurting me in that way, so on. Versus somebody who's like, this is actually harmful behavior overall, that this is beyond something I can accept. So this is actually a bad person for me. You know, there's no clear-cut rules that I can give you because it's different for each person. But you've got to look at your partner and go, okay, he leaves the toilet seat up, but overall he's a great husband. So I guess I'm living with a guy who leaves the toilet seat up. That's just my lot. Courage. In particular, the courage to have confrontations. See, depth in a relationship is not built on good times. It's built on getting through hard times. Good times is like icing on the cake. It gives it the flavor. You got to have good times, or otherwise what's the point in being with somebody? That being said, that's not where depth comes from. I can have good times with someone I barely connect with. And you've done that before. You've had somebody who was your drinking buddy, or you went traveling with them. You had a great time, but that's all. You don't know them very well. If you're left alone in a room together, it's really awkward. There's got to be more to it than that. The courage to bring up difficult things to talk about and to get through those conversations, and the courage to be humble as those conversations are happening and admit to being wrong when you're wrong and so on. The courage to let them have their emotional reaction and not try to control it, and maybe have to deal with them sulking for a while, or even, you know, breaking up for a little while and then getting back together once it's resolved. There's lots of courage required to go deep with someone. There's risk taking where we're going to risk it all to make sure that this resentment doesn't build up, or this truth isn't hidden, or this behavior doesn't lead to betrayal. I'm going to take the risk, and if we can get through this risk, we'll be stronger. Presence. A lot of people, they get to the end of their life, and you can look up the research on this, and they generally just regret not spending more time with loved ones. And yet, if you were to look at their life, they actually spent many, many hours with their loved ones. They lived with them. They went to grandparents every Sunday. The time spent's not the problem. What they're really saying is they weren't there when it was happening. They're away with their worries or their thoughts, or looking at their phone, or worrying about their business, or regretting their past, or wishing they were somewhere else. And that's why it feels like they didn't spend enough time. When we say quality time, we don't really mean that the activity is this amazing thing. You could have quality time just reading a book next to somebody, as long as you're really there. When your partner goes to tell you about her day, fucking listen and respond. Don't just be like, oh, another one of these stories. You're going to regret feeling that way. When your kid comes and shows you the 19th crayon drawing they've done this day and it's just more scribbles, ask them, well, what have you drawn here? Would you like to put it up on the fridge? Like, be part of the process. And if you can't do that, get out. But don't do this wasted time thing because you will regret it later. Assertiveness. We've already touched on confrontations, but assertiveness is about the boundary maintenance. So confrontation is setting of the boundaries. Assertiveness is actually the hard part when behaviors start to creep over the boundary again and you've got to push them back. You might need to have the same uncomfortable conversation 1,000 times in order to protect the relationship. Well, then have that conversation 1,000 times to protect the relationship. You might need to go and have a really uncomfortable moment with your kid's teacher to make sure your kid gets the best possible schooling. Or get your ass in the car and get down to the school for that meeting then. Assertiveness is maintaining the boundaries, even protecting each other from each other. Being assertive with yourself about what you shouldn't be doing and shouldn't be saying because you know it's damaging to the relationship. Putting in a little bit of uncomfortable effort to keep the fucking machine oiled and flowing. Lastly, generosity. Rather than coming into any kind of relationship or friendship in that transactional, what can I get out of it mindset, come and thinking, what can I give to it? How do I make this better? How do I make it that being my partner improves your life? Being my friend is way better than not being my friend. Right? Having me as a dad, you're going to be bragging about what kind of dad you've got. Starting to think what kind of behavior would make those things true, those statements. Rather than hoping they'll give to me and then maybe I'll give to them. A lot of people do that transaction like, I'll be nice to you if you're nice to me first. Well, then who the fuck goes first? Somebody's got to go first, right? Doing it to get something in return, then that's not a connection. That's just a transaction. It's a trade. You're doing business with the person. How about instead of doing business with the person, give who you are to people. Let them do whatever they want with that. And just go to bed satisfied that you gave, that you were part of the life, that you tried to have a positive impact. Of course, there's plenty more values you can apply to your relationship. These are just some of the common ones I've seen help my clients. If you want to become one of those clients who gets helped with this sort of stuff, get in touch, dan@brojo.org, and we'll talk about how to improve your relationship with more integrity.